Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can watch us on YouTube and Rumble while following us on Facebook, or find us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for past episodes, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe or follow today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's The Seance Before the Veil. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. If this is your first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also don't forget to follow wherever you listen to your podcast. Today, healing trauma, the emotional body. This is an interesting bio, and very rarely do I get long ones. At first, when I saw this one, this was fairly long, but I'm like, this is worth reading. Definitely worth reading all the way through. So today, joining us, a renowned thought leader and inspirational speaker who bridges the gap between science and spirituality to make healing accessible to everyone. Born and raised in Argentina, he studied engineering and at the National Technological University of Buenos Aires and taught both mathematics and chemistry. He began his research in Western psychology, healing practices, and plant medicine work, studying under both Western-oriented practitioners and traditional shamans within the Amazon jungle. He developed his own healing methodology, which brings together ancient traditions and Western psychology. With over 10 years of experience, he's led 500 plus ceremonies and has guided more than 10,000 people through transformative journeys. Using a grounded and relatable approach, he's known for making complex concepts easy to understand, helping people from all backgrounds start or deepen their healing process, whether through plant medicine or practical psychology. His insights empower listeners to lead more fulfilled and joyful lives. Let's welcome to the seance for the first time, Iván Chacron. Welcome, brother.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. Humbled when I saw your profile and your work at. I'm honored to have you on the show. I've been through some ceremonies myself in the past, recent past, and have probably studied some similar stuff that you have. I'm not good in mathematics, but I appreciate it. And chemistry.
It's not uncommon for people that are very deep into this work for math to not be their thing.
Yeah. I'm more artistic.
Yeah.
So this shamanic journey, take us back in time briefly and share that with us, how that started.
Yeah. I will want to summarize this part, mostly because I think we have so many great things to talk about. I don't necessarily want to focus it on me, but also some context is important. I was an atheist, and I grew up extremely scientific and skeptical, as my bio kind of allures to when it comes to math and science and all of that. Both parents atheists, and no spiritual practices at all. And I would say I had a fairly good childhood. I know I had a fairly good childhood. So growing up, I also wasn't necessarily thinking that I needed to heal some deep trauma or anything like that. I was also against mind-altering substances. So the fact that I am a plant medicine facilitator today is the most, if you will, unlikely outcome for that kind of background. For all the reasons, people who go to plant medicine tend to have a spiritual tendency at the very least, or much more than that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more than just a tendency, which is why I was saying it's not uncommon to not like math if you're in this world.
Yeah.
But despite being against mind-altering substances based on the ways in which my parents educated me and all my skepticism and all of that, one day I found myself in an ayahuasca ceremony because I trusted a friend, and that was the most transformative night of my life. And in all of the ways in which I would have never expected it. And so I became very much an advocate because what it has done for me, especially not having a quote unquote traumatic childhood, and seeing what it has done for people who had that, I realized the power of these plants, but also how essential it is to start a healing journey. In the moment, I thought that it was only with plants, or that the plants were the way, if you will, or the fastest way. Today, 10 years or a little bit over 10 years later, I realized that is not the way, and that plants are not the only way. They are a tool. That if you confuse the tool with the way, then it is likely that your healing journey is going to actually suffer and go slower. So I teach that in my ceremonies, and I teach that to my students. And part of why I started going into podcasts and I have a YouTube channel and all of that is to kind of demystify the work with plants and anything related to healing and spirituality. And partially is thanks to the fact that as an ex-atheist, I benefited so much from it. And I know so many people either are atheists or super skeptical or super science driven, which I resonate with, but they need healing too, in the same way in which I needed it and didn't know it. So my mission, or if you will, a consequence of who I am, ended up bringing all of the healing modalities in a very relatable way, like in the way in which I wish I would have been talked to when I was in that stage. So I think that's maybe for now enough of the background, but how all of this ended up coming along.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you say that healing work is one of the most important things that we should all be doing. That's a really big statement and a big claim. Why do you believe that?
It is a big statement, and I stand behind those words, but I give that statement consciously, knowing that it is a big statement. And I would even venture to say that it is the most important thing we could be doing, not even one of the most. And I am happy to answer to that question. I would say anything that people are prioritizing today that is not their own healing is going against those things that they are prioritizing. So, for example, somebody can tell me, no, more important than healing work is your family, or to prioritize your family, or to prioritize your work. And I would venture to say that is not the case, because if you prioritize your family without doing healing work first, the form in which you will prioritize your family is going to be partially wounded driven. And so what seems like a priority ends up hurting those very people that you want to love more or prioritize more. So I am not saying drop everything that you're doing, drop your family to go do healing work. What I'm saying is, if you are not having healing work as one of your main priorities in life, all of the other things are going to suffer. So one of the ways in which that plays out is through the cycle in which trauma, almost like a airborne disease, like a virus or any of the common things that we know that they are contagious, ends up transferring from one person to the other. And I'm happy to go into examples if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for example, a mother, I'm coming with hypothetical examples as from the compilation of many cases that I have seen, but a mother had a really rough childhood. Then she has a child. She has not done any healing work around her childhood. And the way in which she starts celebrating the child. Let's say that this mother was punished every time that she had a bad grade in school, and she was rewarded every time that she had a good grade. There are two likely scenarios. What we do is either we do the same thing because we have been given the belief that that is what is good and what is bad. We have like now a framework for this is what's good. Good grades is good because it's going to make you money, it's going to make you successful in life, and that is good. And bad grades is the opposite of that, is bad, and you deserve to be punished for it. When you do bad things, bad consequences come to you. And so now the person is in that framework, and when they have a child, if they have not done any healing work around that specific trauma, for example, they might do the same thing to their child, believing that they are loving them, when in reality, what seems like love, it is just a transfer of a belief system that has been given to you by parents who have not done healing themselves. The other scenario is that you do the opposite. You realize how painful that was to never have the chance to have a bad grade and still be loved for who you are. And so you might go the opposite route and tell your child, whatever you do is fine, it's all good. I actually have a little bit of that story myself, where my father was too loose with me. And in his mind, he was being loving. It's like, I had a really hard childhood. I really love my son. Therefore, I'm going to give everything to him because I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And that is, it sounds and it looks like love, but it is not. What it actually is a counter reaction to a wound that he has not healed himself. Because a child might need some discipline. And eventually, if you don't give any discipline, your child might pay for it later on in life, as I know that I have, and I am doing a lot of healing work around that. Like what was supposedly loving ended up going against me. And not because he did it on purpose, but because he was not in tune with what I actually needed. He was only in tune with his own pain, right? So now these are subtle examples that make a big difference in a person's life. Imagine when, and we've all heard this, people have been physically abused by their parents. You know, a father might hit their child with a belt. We have sexual abuse by parents. We have emotional abuse. We have so much that is much, much worse than what I am talking about. So if what I'm talking about can create such big impact, imagine things that are even harder. So when you don't do healing work, you're going to act as unconsciously, you're not even aware that you're doing this, as a counter reaction for your trauma. When you do healing work, then all of that comes, stops in a way driving your behavior, and it becomes easier to get in touch with what the other person needs, whether that is your child, whether that is your partner, your friends, or even somebody who you don't know. I think the last thing to finish this question is, we're all constantly saying things like, I wish there would be no wars, or I wish people would treat each other better, or I wish there would be more kindness going around. Or even things like, I wish I wouldn't have these random bursts of anger for quote unquote no apparent reason. And all of those are all consequences of unhealed trauma. So if you heal your trauma, it is more likely that you will be kinder to people. Because in a way, this is our natural way of being, is kindness. It is joy. It is light. It is gratitude. And when we're not experiencing those things, they are a mere consequence of the trauma that we have not healed. And that creates all of the things that I mentioned and even more.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, these subtle things, and we all have these subtle things. It seems like it. And the way that you explain it, because it seems like the majority of the people that I've known in ayahuasca ceremony had big, real, they weren't subtle issues. And
Yeah.
first, I mean, and by the end of the weekend or by the end of the week, you start to know them more, and you start to realize, who they are, and the pains and how much healing they've gone through. And then I look into myself, and I look at myself, and I go, wow, I'm better off than I thought it was. I was like, wow. And now I can see how healing is very important for everybody as a collective, for the world, as we all should be focusing in on healing these subtle things.
Yes. A lot of the issues that are global, they are the collective pain just added up together. So when people ask, how can we solve these issues that are global, it can only be done, in my opinion, in one way, which is to start healing yourself.
Yeah.
Because every single thing that you have received in terms of wounding as a human being, you received it because there is collective pain around. So your parents received it, your teachers received it, your educators, like those are super important too. You go to school and you are being told that these are the people who are going to educate you, that they are your teachers. So what seems like a elementary school math teacher is also an educator and is teaching you unconsciously on how to be as a human being. And that person is also wounded. And so the way in which, kids have their teacher that they like and the teacher that they don't, and the teacher that they don't like, most likely they don't like that teacher because the teacher is not attuned to the needs of those children. And that is because they have not done healing themselves. And so as we're growing up, we are, from every person, every time anyone yells at us, every person that flips us off in traffic, any form of wounding that it is collective, we receive it, and then we grow up with it, and then we give it away, with whether we want it or not, and whether we are conscious of it or not. So there's only one way in which you can heal the pain of the world, which is the part that has been given to you. That's all you can do. If I wanted to heal you, Paul, I couldn't do it. Even if I wanted, what I could do is help you walk the path of healing with the things that I have learned. And I can, in the same way in which somebody can teach you a subject in school like math, but cannot, install that in you.
Yeah.
They have to teach it, and then you have to practice. You have to learn. It's essential to have somebody to guide us through that, because doing healing work, even though it is, in a way, is simple, and in another way is really hard if you don't have anyone to guide you through it, because it's also a skill. Once you learn it, it's not that hard. But that is not part of our culture. And so that makes it much harder. The hardest part of doing healing work is not how hard it is to do it, but is that it is not part of our culture. If healing work would be part of our culture, if it would be something that we give it as much priority as anything else, if it would be taught in schools properly, then I think the world would change at a much faster pace toward the direction that we all want to see it change.
Oh, that would be a real blessing if it was taught. Do you know if any of these subject matters or modalities are being taught in any type of schools? That don't have to be public schools, but any type of institutions and stuff other than.
Well, it's interesting because I'm in the process of trying to conceive. It hasn't happened yet. So we started talking about that with my wife, and we have found a few schools or modalities more than schools, that try to do that.
Yeah.
We have not yet investigated it all the way, but I think there are some, if you will, oases here or there in the middle of the desert. But for example, one subject that would be, to me, essential, if anyone listening to this somehow is in charge of some part of the education system in some country, it's okay. Like, we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
An essential subject would be emotional intelligence. So math, great, essential, important. All of the other ones, great. Also, why are we not teaching emotional intelligence? What does that mean? It means to understand what an emotion is, to understand the importance of them, to understand how we dismiss them and how much damage that creates, to understand how the healing process is mostly based on the processing of stuck emotions, why they get stuck. All of this stuff is essential. If this would be taught in schools, I promise you, it would be amazing how fast we would start healing. Because part of the reason why we get wounded, most of the reason why we get wounded, is not because of the trauma itself, as much as it is that a trauma creates an emotion that sometimes is hard to process, not because the emotion is hard to process inherently, but because the environment around it does not support it. So here's an example. I get grounded by my dad. Getting grounded, by the way, is not necessarily a bad thing. So the problem is that a lot of times when we get grounded, the parent disconnects their heart from us. So in that moment, they stop loving us. And a father can be like, no, I'm doing it because it's the right thing. They need to learn. And that is not necessarily false. But what could be false is that in that moment, in the moment that I'm telling you, you're grounded, I might be very angry. And in that anger, there is no love. And the child feels that. And so the child might experience, let's say, also might experience anger or might experience sadness about what just happened. And maybe the child starts throwing a tantrum or crying. And then there is two things that could happen then. The trauma hasn't happened yet because there is still a window there for the traumatic event is happening, but the trauma hasn't happened. The reason why this ends up solidifying as trauma is because most of the reactions tend to be something like, don't cry, go to your room and stay there. And then maybe the child cries and it's like, I told you not to cry. Now the punishment is worse. It was going to be no ice cream. Now it's no ice cream and no TV. Yeah. Just to say something. Or don't talk to your father like that. Don't throw a tantrum. So what's going on in that moment is that the child is experiencing a strong emotion that is not necessarily a hard emotion to experience. It's just strong and it's coming out naturally. And the parent is creating an environment where that emotion is not welcomed. So when the emotion is not welcomed, we swallowed it, it goes inside of us, and that's when the trauma happens. An emotion could not get processed because it was not, the environment for it was not proper. That creates a trauma, and then sometimes 20 or 30 years later, we go to an ayahuasca ceremony or to any other healing setting in which they tell us, hey, your emotions are valid, they are welcomed, here you are, please feel free to re-experience those emotions that are still in you. And a lot of healing happens then. So why is this not being taught in schools? Well, the answer is very simple. It's because nobody has taught our educators that. Yeah. So how can they teach something that they don't know? This is why for me, and I really appreciate being in this podcast, to talk about this publicly is so important, is because I believe it's very close to the solution for a lot of the things that we're always wondering, how are we going to get out of the mess that we got ourselves involved in?
Yeah. It's intriguing how we use words such as grounding. You're grounded. I mean, look at the word in and of itself, ground. We use grounding, grounded, grounding in a lot of metaphysical aspects, and how it's used and what we're actually doing. To me, when a child is grounded, it's like, okay, like you said, that energy is being disconnected, and now the child now gets to ground themselves in their own energy. Pay attention to your own vibration and focus inward on themselves and reconcile what's going on, what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
I love that reflection.
Yeah.
Now, you could, as a parent, promote that behavior by saying something like, so if somebody's asking themselves, this is stemming off of what you're saying. If somebody's asking themselves, well, how do you ground your child if it's also needed? And it is needed. The child needs to learn that sometimes certain actions have consequences that are not going to be fun. But not going to be fun does not have to equate to not being loved. And as I mentioned, it's not about that you stop loving your child forever. Even if it's for a moment, the child feels that disconnection.
Yeah.
So how do you, if someone is wondering, how do I ground my child? You ground your child by saying something like, you're grounded because of these reasons. And when the child starts screaming or having the natural reaction to it, you hold the child in whatever's going on and say, like, this doesn't mean I don't love you. I know this is not fun. And this could be an opportunity for you to take and understand what is it that happened. And, of course, depending on the age of the child and the emotional maturity, you might say that and it might not mean anything to the child. But I'm not saying that you have to learn these words and repeat them. This is more like the, if you will, energetic exchange, where you're still holding your child in their pain and telling them that your love for them is not at risk, that they are still lovable, even if they do something wrong. And so that creates an environment where the child might go to a room and think about it, because the love of the parent, which is essential for a child, it is one of the most basic, if not the most basic human need, is not at risk. If that is not at risk, then you can think about what you've done. It probably will happen mostly automatic, without you even having to explain, this is your time to reflect. That might not mean much to a child. Right? So that can facilitate what you just talked about the child reflecting and grounding in their own energy. But if they feel that your love toward them is at risk, they might actually get more ungrounded in a way. They might go to a room and be like, what's going on? I feel all of this. I can't really express it. My dad doesn't love me. And then just like disconnection.
They'll and depending on their age, you'll end up rebelling, and who knows, run away from home, blah blah blah. And we know those stories. Hear them on the news.
For sure.
How does plant medicine play a role in people's healing, and is it possible to do the healing without plants?
Beautiful question. It is possible to do it without plants. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because the world needs a lot of healing, and the plants, as I mentioned, first, it would be very hard for 7 billion people to be drinking plant medicine right now at the same time. So there's that, if you will, logistical issue. But also another, I think, beautiful thing about healing being independent of the plants is just that it is independent of the plants. And so if a plant makes you dependent on it for your healing, is it really a medicine? Right? Like, it's the same as ibuprofen. If you have, let's say, an issue in your neck and you get headaches every day, you take ibuprofen, it helps you cope. Is that really a medicine? No, it's not, because medicine, even the word assumes healing, assumes like the problem is gone. You take ibuprofen, your neck, if it's misaligned, it's going to continue staying misaligned. You're just going to depend on it so that you don't feel the pain. So if there would be something that would make the neck realign and then the pain goes away, that is the actual healing part. And that could be many things. It could be somebody who works on your neck, or it could be, who knows, it could be an array of different things. So for a medicine to be a medicine, in a way, it must make you independent of the medicine itself. The same as me as a teacher. If I were to be your teacher, or whoever wants to be anyone's teacher, the idea would be for the student to eventually be independent of the teacher and be able to do whatever the teacher has taught, whether that is healing, something in university, or how to, whatever that is, a craft, being a locksmith, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Now, if the teacher is like, come to me and I'll do that thing that you want to learn all the time, then the person doesn't learn. That's not really a teacher. The same happens with medicine. So yes, the plants are there as teachers and as medicines, because they teach us how to do healing work. And so how do plants play a part is by, for example, you have, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, great. I want to start my healing journey right now. And I heard that a big part of it is to process unprocessed emotions. Okay, how do I process them? Where do I start?
Yeah.
And then maybe they're like, okay, hi, Iván, like, can you help me process these emotions? And like, sure, let's go, like, let's start doing a meditation. Let's start bringing them up. And one thing that I've noticed is that if the trauma was deep enough, the person might have no access at all to those emotions. So they're like, how can we process something that I don't have access to? And a lot of times not having access also means that you don't even know that they are there. So maybe they're like, what do I have to process? Is it there? Maybe, I guess I believe you, but it's like this no man's land.
Yeah.
So what do the plants do? You drink them and they assist in the bringing up of whatever it needs to be processed. And that's why they are such great tools. They accelerate our healing by helping us reach into places that are either hard to reach or impossible without them. In the same way in which you can make a house without modern tools, but it's probably not going to be as solid. You're probably not going to do it as fast. And there's certain type of houses that you might not ever be able to build. You might be able to build a basic one, but not a skyscraper. And this is the same thing. You might be able to process certain emotions without plants, but if you're going to go into really, really deep within your, the deepest part of your trauma, plants assist in bringing that up. Plants are not the only way, by the way. Breath work, meditation, there's many other modalities. It happens that plants are a very effective one. They're very, very efficient. You might get a plumber who's never meditated in their life and that they might feel like very resistant to meditation, or they may even try and fail and be like, this is not for me. What am I doing here sitting with my eyes closed? Right? So it is, right now it feels like, now I might move a little bit into the esoteric part of life, but I feel that you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it life, however you want to call it, but that it is bringing to us psychedelic plants and in mass, because this is what we need in this moment, because it will accelerate our healing in a way that it feels to me that it is just very needed. If we don't act fast, we're going to hurt ourselves, maybe beyond a point of no return. So these plants are here not to heal us, but to accelerate our own healing by teaching us how to do it. So, and by allowing what we would call the fruit that it is hanging really high in the tree, it kind of lowers it so that you can go pick it and then start your healing journey.
Yeah. Yeah. In a sense, like you said, that they're tools. Plants are tools in the toolbox, in nature's toolbox. We just got to choose the right one. How do you want to build? How do you want to build this relationship with the universe and yourself? And that plant is that particular tool into that next the next journey.
And think about how much we depend on plants, right? People are like, I shouldn't depend on a plant for my healing. I was like, well, you depend on a plant for your air. You depend on a plant for your food. You depend on a plant to feed the animals that you eat, you depend on a plant for literally everything, for the bees to even be a thing and the whole biology to be connected. And you, like, no plants, you depend on plants. There's no question about it. And people nowadays are so obsessed with, like, well, broccoli has enough vitamin A. This other one, kale, has, like, great. So everyone's super focused in how are these plants good for my body. Now we're focusing so much in that, which I focus on that too. I'm so all in for healing, healthy lifestyle. But who said that plants are only good for our bodies? There's also plants that are good for our minds, because as much as our bodies need nourishment and healing, plants are healing. Our minds need nourishment and healing too. And I like calling it God. It's not the religious God. It's not the Christian God. It's not the God with beard. It's like the everything.
Yeah.
But these plants are there, available for us. Why would they be there? As for now, I have not seen anything in nature that is not so in connection and aligned with everything else. I have not seen nature do anything for no reason. The more I investigate it. So why would these plants be there if it's not to help us with something as essential as healing our mind?
Yeah. Plants are so inclusive. It's an essential part of the ecosystem. And as we get more involved in technology and in the future, people are forgetting the importance of plants. It's like, come on, man. It's just very essential.
Mm-hmm.
But before we move a little further, is for those who are watching can see your website down scrolling on the bottom, but how can people find you?
So my website, ivanchakran.com, is one of them. And then you can get in touch with me there. I offer both what we've been talking about, as well as one-on-one coaching sessions on Zoom. That's a little bit of somewhat similar of psychology therapy, but with everything that I've learned as a plant medicine facilitator. So it's a little bit of a combination of many modalities. A lot of people have told me that those sessions have been more useful to them than classic therapy. I have a lot of therapists that come, so I have nothing against therapy. I think it's essential as well. So that's one of the things. And the other part that I'd like to advertise is not necessarily because I will make anything out of it or money or anything. Is because, as we mentioned, plants are not the only way to heal. There's other ways to healing. And my mission, or one of them, is to bring as much healing as I can to the world. And I know that using plants is not going to be like that, but I can talk about it and help people get inspired to start their healing journey. And so that's why I started my YouTube channel, which I would encourage people to visit, which is youtube.com/ I think it's first at Iván Chakran. And there every week I release a video on how to process an emotion, what fear is, and new ways I talk about plant medicine. I respond to questions that people ask. And I even have a podcast in that channel too. And there's all related to healing work. So, I've been receiving good feedback about it. So I hope that anyone who goes there will enjoy it, because it's made with a lot of love.
Yeah. That's a really it's a cool website. I like it. And they can find you on Facebook, Instagram.
All of the socials. Fortunately, my name is not very common. So if I would be, I don't know, Paul Johnson, probably my socials wouldn't be that. But I'm lucky enough that all my socials are at Iván Chakran. Yeah.
Is there anything new coming down that people can look forward to? You got any? You traveling? You doing some special in-person, remote work coming up in the new year?
So I serve in ceremony, and I used to serve every week somewhere. I for many years, I've been in an airplane almost every week, going from city to city, country to country. I got a little bit burnt out of that kind of schedule and being jet lagged.
Yeah.
So my priorities are shifting a little bit. I am more focused on bringing healing more widely with my YouTube channel, with podcasts, with live conferences and stuff like that. But I still serve in ceremony once a quarter, approximately. So if anybody, mostly in the US, but I do travel to Europe, and so if anyone is interested, they can try to hit me up, and I will give them a little bit more information. I much rather keep that on a one-by-one cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. So before we go, what do you have as a takeaway for our audience today?
Meaning as a summary of what we've been saying?
Either as a summary else? Or kind of like words of wisdom. I mean, that was all words of wisdom, but kind of like a, yeah, a very important.
Let me see. If you don't mind, I'll take a few seconds to see
all right.
What wants to come through. What's coming through is I have noticed a lot of hopelessness as part of the veil of our society. And it is very, very understandable why. When we look at the state of the world, I think we can all agree that it is very far from what our hearts want it to be.
Yeah.
And I want you to know, if you're listening to this, that your hopelessness is granted, and that it is okay to feel hopeless and sad and all of the other things that might arise from it. And I go through those things myself too, as much as I can talk about it and how much healing work I've done for myself. Yet, I also know that hopelessness is a natural reaction to the situation we're in, but is not something that we necessarily have to succumb to, because the harder things are, the more that I see people's hearts come through to go and assist each other. And in a way, the darkest place in the world is, the more the space it gives for a very dim light to shine stronger. And I see that happening. I see it when there is a catastrophe, how many people go there to assist and donate their time. And or when a friend that you might not have cared for as much goes into crisis, how a lot of times all of that is left behind just to go and give a hand. And so, yes, there is a lot. There's a good reason to feel hopeless about, and at the same time, there is hope, and the hope starts with people doing healing work. Everything that we are afraid that we are never going to achieve, we have not been taught that healing is the solution for that. So if we start looking for solutions, it's going to be really, really hard to find it. But I feel not necessarily that I found it, but that at the very least, we're going to move in the right direction and end up finding the solution from when we are operating from a more healed place. So even if healing work is not the solution for all the problems, which I am not sure, it could very well be, at the very least, it will clear the fog. It helps clear the fog out so that the solutions start emerging naturally. So the more hopeless you feel, that's a bigger call for you to start doing your part, which is the only thing you can do, which is to start healing. People around you will see it, and they will get inspired, and they will want to do what you're doing. And you are going to help others heal with your own healing just by being your own healed version without even having to ask for it. People are going to see it and want the same thing that you're doing. So your healed version, without you having to do anything, just being you, a more healed version of yourself, it already kickstarts a beautiful chain reaction of healing work that it is going to bring upon the world that we might sometimes feel hopeless about.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Very well said, brother. Absolutely. You're very
thank you
welcome.
so much for giving space for this kind of content to be out. There's so much content that is just useless. And this, I feel like, is a lot of what we really need. So I really appreciate you giving space for this, Paul.
You're very welcome. That's what this space is for. It's specifically and all about this. It's all about healing, looking inward, and healing the world. It's one body, one soul at a time, until we can get the whole, and until we can get the collective. So, but yeah. Blessings, brother. Blessings, brother. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for those who are trying to find you, it's Iván Chacron, which will be that'll be in the show notes. For those who are listening, just look in the show notes, and your website will be there. A link to it. Reach out to him. Send him. If you got any questions, just definitely.
I'd be happy to answer. Yeah.
Cool. Iván, blessings, brother. You have
blessings
a wonderful rest of the day, evening, and rest of the week. Actually, it's the end of the week here, so.
Same to you. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome. Thank you, everybody, for watching Before the Veil. And until next time, we'll see you then.